Good evening. Welcome to today's program. Today, I'm going to talk about how Islam was concocted and how the greatest conspiracy in human history was hatched. The title might have been shocking for some of you, but I believe for the sake of humanity and for the sake of future generation and for the sake of honesty in research, I must try to tell you the truth where I stand now. Um, Throughout my journey since the age of 16, I have gone through many upheavals, ups and downs, twists and turns, because I have tried to maintain neutrality. And during this pursuit for the truth, I had to change my position quite a few times. There are many reasons for that. First of all, deception everywhere, lies everywhere, hindrances everywhere, obstacles everywhere. And to come over all these hurdles, I had to opt for various options to seek the truth. And I must be judged by where I stand now. As you all know by this time, that I did leave Islam in the past, but I did come back to Islam, believing Quran to be the ultimate truth. Because when I was reading the Quran, I was trying to understand it from historical perspectives. And I found that there is a huge difference in the understanding of Islam from purely Quranic perspectives and from a perspective where you have to take Quran and Hadith on board together. And I found Hadiths to be rather against the Quran. That's why most of the scholars who preach Islam or propagate Islam, they base their understanding of Islam from Hadiths. And they recite the Quran, they learn Arabic, and they say Quran is the infallible words of Allah. Whereas if you follow Quran, it is hardly justifiable to follow Hadith to understand it. Because in fact, Hadith doesn't explain Quran in many cases. And Hadith try to legislate Islamic laws, rituals, which have no basis in Quran. And often, on the other hand, even if you try to take Hadith on board to follow Islam of today, still that becomes almost impossible. For example, today is Friday, Jummah Day. Most of the Muslims around the world will take it as a holy day or a day where you go for the Friday prayers, and they will emphasize on it a lot. But Quran doesn't give you any clear instructions about how to pray the Jummah prayer. What is going to happen to the midday prayer? And it is also very difficult to justify Jummah Day to be a regular prayer day from the Quranic perspective only. Then, if you throw this question to Muslim scholars at large or to ordinary Muslims that, hey, why do I have to pray Jummah? They'll say, well, it is mandatory in the Quran. And if you engage with a discussion with him, then you'll be lost in translation. Then eventually a time will come when they will emphasize on accepting hadiths. Okay, for argument's sake, you say, all right, I will follow hadith. So tell me, what do I need to do? How do I pray the Jummah prayer? You can't find any clear instructions. Even from the Sahih hadith collections, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmizi, Nasai, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, how many rakas are there in the Jummah prayer? Can't find it. And going into the nitty-gritty details of why should I have to pay, how many rakas I have to pay, why this, why that, they will say, okay, you have to listen to the greatest imams, Imam Shafi, Imam Hanbal, Imam Abu Hanifa. Then you will find out they have serious differences, even regarding the issue of Jummah prayer. Then they will say, well, you can opt for any one of them. Then if you are a real researcher, you will see that the hadith collectors had real problems with the jurists like Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Hanbal, because the teacher of Bukhari himself, Ishaq ibn Ruhayya, who inspired Bukhari to pen down his hadith collections, allegedly didn't like Abu Hanifa. But most of the Muslims in South Asia will brand themselves as of the madhab, of the school of Abu Hanifa. So you are lost again. What are the reasons? Why are we so lost? Why are we obliged to take up things and instructions and rituals which are not there, sometimes even in the Quran, which sometimes will go against the Quran itself? For example, you can't alter human body. And if you wear a tattoo like I have, they will say, well, tattoo is haram, forbidden in Quran. And they will say you can't alter body as per Quran. Because Allah says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. He has created human beings in the best of molds, and there is no clear instructions to allow altering of human body. But I will say, why do you circumcise them? You are lost. They will say it is, we have to follow Prophet Abraham and he was circumcised. Where do you get it? It's not in the Quran. Oh, it's in the Bible. It's the book of circumcision. Well, then it goes against the Quran. You can't alter human body. As you said, I can't do tattoos. You're lost again. Then you will see a synchronicity of Judeo-Christian rituals in hadiths. You're lost again. So I had to dig deeper. And I've been writing a book for some times now. And from one of my latest writings, I will read for you. And then I will come back to my discussion again. Let me read it from my writing. I titled that chapter, How Simple Monotheism conceded to hadith-based conceited Islam. I'll read up. Quran was never bestowed on Muhammad as a single book. It was collated into a book from collections of several manuscripts from various eras during as far back as the Hellenistic period and to as late as the 7th century. The step was taken on the 9th century by the Abbasid caliphs to run the divided nations under one Arabic theocracy. Several fake characters were created to compile various moral sayings and fables into hadith collections by creating the fake persona of Muhammad. Several fictitious pen names were created to concoct divine interpretations, and various inscriptions were translated into Arabic to breach ancient monotheism with the latter ones. emerald tablet was translated into Arabic by Zabir ibn Hayyan, whose existence in history is questionable. Rather, it is more logical to deduce that the real translator didn't want to take the blame of many concoctions in his name to the latter generations. Scholars were employed to write fictitious biographies, and at the time, sorry, and at the um, and it was held that Christians and Jewish scholars were often engaged in concocting lies, fictitious biographies, Islamic, so-called Islamic rituals. And they did it because they were being persecuted for their certain understanding of Christianity. For example, the Nestorians were being persecuted by the Byzantines. Ishaq ibn Hunayn ibn Ishaq and Ishaq ibn Rahway had played their roles behind such concoctions. Islam synchronized into a new form of Abrahamic religion to console the feuding communities and sects. Byzantinians, Nestorians, and various Jewish communities were persecuting one another. Islam was never practiced as a religion of Islam that we know today in the early centuries of claimed Islamic history. Rather, it was known as the Ismaili faith. There is not a single complete carbon dated copy of the Quran available until the 11th century. And there is not a single copy of Bukhari Hadith collection until the 12th century. Not a single statue or painting of Muhammad or his closest companions were available until the 9th century. Not even of his imaginary artistic descriptions were available until the 9th century either. To seal off the demands for Muhammad's documented existence, hadiths were concocted to bar statue carving when Quran does not forbid statue making unless made for idolatry. Hadith collectors became more respected and influential than the real scholars like Abu Hanifa or other jurists. And historians were sidelined. Abu Hanifa, Imam Hanbal's, Zafar al-Sadiq were vehemently persecuted, whereas except Nasai, none of the hadith collectors was ever persecuted by the caliphs. The hadith collections were apologetic in mentioning the narrators or about the chain of narrators, as most of the important companions were avoided as much as possible owing to controversial and paradoxical stories surrounding them. Flimsy excuses were created to justify the unquestionable respect for all so-called companions of Muhammad, when even the companions of Muhammad, if they really were Muhammad's companions, were at each other's throats. No coin or wall inscriptions or stone carvings can be found about Muhammad or his closest companions until the 8th centuries. Some of the Christians in the early centuries did mention once or twice about a Muhammad who can hardly be justified to be the Muhammad of Islam for various historical discrepancies. It is almost impossible to connect any of the well-recorded individual of the 7th century to Muhammad. For example, Muawiyah existed as there are stone inscriptions in his name, but there is no evidence of Muawiyah being connected to anyone by the name of Muhammad clearly. A vague mentioning of Muawiyah acknowledging a prophet is rather vague as it is not possible to confirm who that prophet really was. You can't really connect Ali with Muhammad, and you can't really connect Ali's sons with Muhammad's daughter, Fatima. Because surprisingly, Christian and Jewish sources do confirm that Ismail had, Prophet Ismail that is, had two wives, one by the name Fatima, another one by the name of Aisha. Shocking, rather. What a coincidence, because Muhammad had allegedly had his daughter named Fatima and his wife named Aisha. Various linguistic anthropological researchers prove Quran to have influences of various religious and languages in chapter variances. Almost impossible to connect Muhammad to Mecca or Medina of today from any of the Quranic verses. Archaeology can't prove existence of Islam or Muhammad in Mecca or Medina during his alleged lifetime. Medina simply means a city. Story descriptions of various chapters in the Quran direct the readers to present-day Syria, Israel, or other parts of northern Arabia or Mesopotamia. Tribal history of Arabian Peninsula debunks Islamic traditional history of tribes during alleged lifetime of Muhammad. Historical facts and rationale do not add up with the traditional Islamic history. Abu Jahl, for example, was not even mentioned in Quran, and there can be no justification behind Muawiyah migrating to Amwas or Justinian plague hit region, along with his thousands of followers to Syria. The most stable and powerful Muslim caliph of the early alleged Islamic history, Muawiyah, did not build a single mosque during his 39 years of reign. And Christian cross, which is against the direct Quranic verse, was still in circulation from his treasury, of which a Christian monk was in charge of. Surprisingly, I'm sure that many of the Muslims, if they were Muslims during the lifetime of Muawiyah, were carrying cross depicted coins in their pockets when they were going to prayer houses. In religious history, gods were created, man gods were created, prophets were created, and in latter centuries, saints were created to slowly give divinity to religious faiths, as religious claims were being challenged by agnostics and atheists with scientific and logical demands. Super divine claims were sobered up as centuries passed and humans became more rational and analytical in their conclusions. Simple attempt to propagate a faith based on simple monotheism became unburdened with rituals at every step of life in the pursuit of making this insecure God, Allah, content. All religions are man-made, but we are surely to see religions in newer shapes in the future. Worshipping of religious and cult leaders amongst the vast majority of Muslims of today, though they are in denial of doing so, usher the newest shape of Islam in the offing. Muslims of today rather worship Muhammad instead of Allah. They are in denial of it. Sometimes they will try to justify wearing a bear to be a ritual which will gain blessings. But in fact, there can be no true justification behind such claims. The overwhelming demand to follow every step of Muhammad, how he used to eat, how he used to take footsteps, how he used to brush his teeth, all have killed the simple freedom of human dignity. It has become as if a computer operated, manual instructed robotic religion, where there is no respect for human freedom. Well, I've been writing the book, and soon you will be getting a copy of it available online, hopefully. But it will take me at least another couple of years to finish it because I'm going to um, enrich it with all the references that you might need to look for. I may take some questions if there is any. Is there any question now?
Yes, sir. Thank you very
Yeah,
much
go ahead.
for your presentations. Well, I
Mhm.
have two questions, sir, if you would allow me. Uh, so we cannot erase Islam in the face of the earth, not yet, maybe, or do we have to, first of all? And if the Islam we have, the so-called Islam we are preaching by, or does it serve any good for the humanity if if we have to reform it? And the second question is, sir, what is the greatest argument or the best argument you can say to refute the concept of divinity, God's divinity?
God becomes irrelevant to me. I will answer your second question first. God, God's divinity is relevant when I don't see Him intervening in any of my activities directly, and there is no proof as such that He does, even if He exists. Then why should I be bothered about it? Why should anyone be bothered about it? More so, the perception of God needs to evolve as well. With all the exoplanets being discovered every day, with all the scientific know-how that we have today, with all the NASA findings that we have today, it is rather idiotic to say these are all conspiracies because these are all available for scientists from all over the world to verify. So there are possibilities and serious possibilities, and I don't see why not, that there are extraterrestrials who are far more superior than us. So if there are beings who are superior than us, there are possibilities that they made superior robots than we can make today. The robots or artificial intelligence that we are building today was absolutely unthink of, a few decades ago. So how can we even say that we are not advanced robots? How can we say we are not even advanced robots who can make up their own decisions, perceptions? It may be that we are living in an illusion as well. Maybe we are in a hologram as well. We don't know. But you can't say that we are not made by other extraterrestrials, or we are every day we are developing higher breed of animals, more intelligent breed of animals. For example, my dog Fred was a crossbreed of German Shepherd and Rottweiler. So he's an engineered dog. So how can we say we are not engineered monkeys? We were taught ever since we were born that we are Ashraf al-Makhluqat, best of creation. This understanding, this claim, what we are the best of creation, emanates from the fact that we don't see any superior being than us in this world, apparently, although that is questionable, because I do think that dogs are better than human beings in many understandings. But still, we don't see more rationals, beings with superior intellect than us on this planet. So that's why we say that we are the best of creations, and we accept that if you are the best of creations, then any being who had created us obviously has the ability to create everything else because we're the best of creation. So that claim has made us believe that if we have a creator, that creator is the creator of everything. Rather, I believe that if we were created by extraterrestrials or alien beings, then that alien being is our God in a way. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that particular alien race or being created everything else. So I'm not bothered about such divine claims that, God intervened, he sent his prophet, and blah blah blah, he became a Prabhu, or whatever you want to call, because they can't be scientifically proven, they can't be logically accepted. Because you see, throughout history, we created, as I said, gods, then we created man gods, then we created prophets, and their miracles became slowly, things which needed to be challenged, and when they were being challenged, they couldn't perform, because the entire Quran, there's not a single verse to say Muhammad performed any miracle. The description of him dividing the moon is not there. It says that moon was split asunder. When you look at the sky, you see half moon, so it might have meant that. But there's not because we see that he was being harassed constantly to perform miracles, but he couldn't deliver that. He was being harassed for that. So you see, we are sobering up as scientifically we are progressing, logically, rationally we are progressing. So religion is sobering up as well. All these divine claims are sobering up as well. So I don't see any reason for me to worry
Yes,
about
sir.
that.
Regarding that, do you think we have to reform the religion as well within it?
I'm coming to that. Now, as far as the religion is concerned, we'll always have a religion. There are various definitions of religions. What do you call a religion? In a way, if you if you don't connect religion with divine claims, then you will say water has its religion. It flows downstream. But when it comes to theology or philosophy, as Bertrand Russell said once, if it is a lie, it's lie. If it is true, it is true. There's no middle ground. If it is a lie, it can't have any moral purpose eventually. So if the purpose of reforming it is to bring it to the truth, then okay, that's fine. So, for example, when I was doing the series on finding the real Islam, eventually I found that Quran offers nothing except the faith in one God. It doesn't offer anything else, really. Hadith does, interpretations do, but Quran doesn't offer anything else other than believing in one God, to be precise. And if someone, as we don't know yet much about our apparent existence, and someone says, I believe in God, I will say, okay, that's a good hypothesis, might have been. I also have a hypothesis, probably I was made by alien race, or probably I don't even exist, because probably existence is an illusion. And someone can say I'm an agnostic, or someone can say I'm an agnostic atheist. That you can't really argue against that, and they really don't harm the society. So if your purpose is to bring it to that level of understanding, go ahead, and you will see that reforming Islam will come to a point when they will say, I believe in Quran. And if you want him to stick to it, then you will find that he will not be able to prove anything else. He will not be able to make any claim other than oneness of God. Even oneness of God can be challenged rationally. But anyway, nevertheless, I don't see it can have any moral purpose if you want to stick to certain things. You want to stick to rituals, it can't have any moral purpose. It can't serve any practical purpose. These are all reminiscences of the savage past. They were like political movements of the past, theocracy, like Arab, every superpower concocts a theocracy or a political ideology. For example, the Western world created democracy. Soviet Union created their own communism, Leninism, Stalinism, to embolden themselves and to have a greater border. Then Chinese, they created, or the concept of Maoism. Now India wants to flex its muscles, and they have created this Hindutva political theocracy. The same way, the Arabs, they created Islamic Arabic theocracy, where they tried to govern their lands under one governing system, and they made it forbidden to allow they banned rather their natives, their citizens, their residents to follow anything else other as religion other than Islam, and they concocted it in such a way that it influences and dictates every aspect of life. It dictates you how to eat, so that people don't follow different ways of life, because it becomes very difficult if the citizens, neighbors even of a neighborhood, follow different rituals. Some will say, sorry, I can't go to work today because, for example, it is my religious holiday. Or we have to invade a country. Sorry, I can't do that. It is forbidden for me to fight when it's during the full moon. And you can find proofs of that even in the Quran, as we discussed in the past, that Allah said that there are only 12 months in a year and all that. So there are 4 holy months. So you can see there are efforts to unite the followers of Islam or followers of Muhammad who didn't even convert to Islam under one certain religious rule. And if Muhammad existed, that is. But I have no doubt in my mind that a theocracy was formulated during the late Umayyad Caliph and early Abbasid Caliphates. Especially Al-Mansur might have had a role to play, a serious role to play, where the persona of Muhammad was created by Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq's grandfather was a Christian monk. Then you have another Ishaq, Ishaq ibn Hunayn, who was a Jewish man who had serious influence along with his nephew on Baitul Hikmah, the center for research in Baghdad, where thousands of manuscripts, Judeo-Christian Greek manuscripts, were translated into Arabic. And there are influences from Barmakid Buddhists during Caliph Harun al-Rashid. So a character fictitious character of Muhammad was created. And it was impossible for people to verify those stories, the stories who had their roots in far off places, because you can't really imagine world of that time to modern day time when it comes to traveling. It was quite a distant away from Baghdad to Medina, Mecca. And Medina, Mecca, and Baghdad, they had problems, as you can find those during lifetime of Ali and Muawiyah, Syria. They were all other claimants to the caliphate. So there were problems there. As there were problems, it was almost impossible for political reasons to go and verify those claims as well. So this seerah was concocted, sponsored rather by the caliphs. And then under the caliph's instructions, these hadiths were collected. Those were nothing but moral sayings, fables, and of various parts, various areas, and various chapters of Quran are in fact nothing but excerpts from various manuscripts where they had something to do with monotheist claims. For example, there are monotheist claims in Hindu scriptures as well. For example, Sharbang, Kalidan, Brahma. So there are monotheist claims in every religion to some extent. So they were all collected and collated into together with an effort of making those as a central constitution of religious understanding. So I don't see any reason for religion to be reformed. But eventually, even if you try to reform, you will see that 99% of all religions are totally baseless, and they can be historically challenged. The Muhammad's existence, or Abu Hurairah's existence, is no less impossible to prove than the existence of Hindu god Hanuman. You can't prove existence of Hanuman. You can't really prove existence of Jesus either. I can very much challenge the existence of Jesus as well as Son of God. And also, it is, I mean, proving Bible contents is more plausible than that of Quran. But still, you can't prove Hanuman, you can't prove Abu Huraira. You can't prove existence of Abu Huraira because you can really logically refute their existences. Logically, someone who allegedly had 15 kunyas, 15 names, 15 different names. Scholars could never agree about his original name. So let alone his thousands of hadith descriptions. Absurd. If you cannot prove Abu Huraira, you cannot prove Aisha, you can't prove the validity of any hadiths, because they were the fathers of hadith narrators, in fact, father and mother of hadith narrators. That's where I stand very much so. Any question from Faisal or Irfan Mojumdar?
Sir, can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, if we analyze the geographical or regional studies of this Arabian Peninsula, we'll see that possible indication is to the northern region of Arabia, specifically Quran. There is, with my studies, I found some similarities with the signoricity or interpolation when referring to northern region. There is also a discovery or also an argument that can be presented, that is why Mecca was chosen for why Mecca was chosen as the center city of the Islamic faith or the nomad faith. It is definitely possibly due to a close sanctuary which was located in the northern region, northern Syrian region, northern Syrian region, which consists hills and tracts, which are from the Christian faith, which in doctrinated traditions are in the match of the Christian and the Jews, if I'm correct. This has led some word that the total synchronicities between Judeo-Christian concept has been led down to a new faith, Islam. Thus every we do not see much maybe from the Quran, the clear interpolations, but a heavy doctrinal interpolation we see from the hadiths, let's say the coming of the Messiah and the Antichrist and other type of like circumcision tradition and other tradition which actually fulfills the desire of the tribal people to match up the traditions of the Christians and the Jews in that region. So, sir, that led us to believe that everything and almost everything we can prove, even the Quranic stories with analysis, that these are interpolated from the either Greek stories or Hellenistic stories, or maybe some other Samaritan stories, chronicles, which are interpolated and named with the prophets. So I think you have noticed something, that even in the Quran, the prophet names have maybe the most the prophet names are heavily influenced by the possibly the Syriac and the Christian synchronicities, where the Jewish prophets are left aside or mentioned or not detailed in the Quran. I felt some prophets. So that thinking of the tribal people, namely during the time of Muawiyah, I believe that it all started from the root with the Umayyad caliphs. he fulfilled the desire of the nomads tribes, and also controlled the Christian monarchs, like inclusion of cross in his coins. We see,
Mm.
and everything signoricity has made up or made the root of this doctrine. And the later, sir, you mentioned that the Baitul Hikmah heavified the codex very much, and very much these hadiths and doctrination is a total interpolation which made up this. Nothing can
I
be
mean,
proved,
even if,
nothing can be a basis of
even
this
if,
religion.
right, Irfan, even if Muhammad ever existed, even if he ever existed,
Yes.
he never lived in Mecca and Medina. No doubt,
No, no,
absolutely
we can
zero
prove.
doubt in my mind.
Yes,
And
very much.
and you can see if you read Quran, as I taught many of you, if you read Quran and research into linguistics and anthropology or of Arabic language, many of the people, for example, mullahs of the madrasas, they try to learn Arabic. They'll be, I mean, their Arabic is questionable, but still, they will not be able to tell you which word came from which word and what are the words in Quran, how these words are influenced from which source, which language. They won't be able to tell you that.
Right, right.
For example, wattine wa zaytune wa turi sinin. This word sinin is Sinai, in fact, but sinin
Sinai.
is a Hebrew word. But Quran use here
Hebrew.
sinin. And if
Hebrew.
you see, when Quran is describing regions, particularly of where Hebrew was spoken or Aramaic was spoken, or descriptions of Palestine and around that region, you will see if those chapters of the Quran are using words, and if and you are investigating those words, you will see those chapters are heavily influenced by Hebrew language. And
Right,
also,
right.
they are structurally same, way of description same. For example, chapters, as I discussed, which starts with a swearing. For example, Allah is swearing by his mountain, swearing by this, and for example, "Wattine wa zaytune wa turi sinin wal asr innal insana lafi khasr." These are all more or less the chapters are of the same size. There is a similarity in descriptions. Then the same applies for surahs which starts with like say, for example, "Qul huwallahu ahad, qul a'udhu birabbin nas, qul a'udhu birabbil falaq." You will see their style is almost the same.
Right.
And the linguistic anthropology, they have similarities. The same goes for chapters which are bigger in sizes. For example, chapters which are dealing with Christian or religious, or say Judeo-Christian concept. For example, when they're
Yes.
discussing like about Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham,
Prophets.
or discussing about Maryam.
Yes.
You will see there are descriptions of Syria and around that region, and where, as you know, that if you also investigate the history, the Syrian people during the 6th, 7th centuries, they had misconceptions or variant understanding of Christianity, where a small minority of them will discuss about Trinity having Maryam in the Trinity, or Ezra being the son of God in the Jewish tradition, which all those are a minor population. They're not there anymore of today. But Quran did not address the vast majority of Christian concept that much. Why? Because it was addressing, or it was being discussed in the region where variant understanding of or synchronized understanding of Christianity were prevalent. Syrian region or Mesopotamian region. The influences are there.
Syrian, northern region, northern Syria.
Exactly. And there are also excerpts from Bible.
These are from Bible.
I'm not prepared to lie about it. But if you see, when you discuss the chapter of Joseph, you're talking about Joseph.
Prophet, Joseph. Right.
Yes, Prophet Yusuf, Joseph. If you read
Pretty
about
much
Joseph
copied
in
from
the Bible,
the Bible.
I mean, verse by verse, it is copied from Bible, verse by verse.
Very well. Yes.
As if, when somebody memorizes and forgets a few things, There's, as if you read the Quranic chapter when you're discussing Joseph, you will see as if somebody memorized the biblical chapter and he forgot here and there. So,
Yes. Very
so
well.
there are many examples. For example, there is a huge influence of Hellenistic mythology.
Hellenistic mythologies from the Greek and the Samaritans.
Exactly. About Alexander, about the
Alexander,
seven sleepers of the cave.
cave, the Khidir story,
Yes.
possibly. Yes.
And it was a very much talked about thing, during the 7th century. If you read, you go ahead and read.
Yeah.
During the 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries about the seven sleepers.
Seven sleepers. Yes, sir.
And the seven sleepers allegedly migrated from Greece, Rome, and to Turkey,
Roman Turkey.
and
Yes. Roman region.
present day Turkey. You see, what does it tell you? What does it tell you? Because
Yes, sir.
the Jewish kings and the Christian kings, they tried to control present day Arabia, but they were finding it very difficult because they were tribes, they were tribal people, nomads. So
Yes,
how do you
nomads, yes.
control the nomads? So they had to concoct this theocracy so that they could all bring it under one roof. So Islam is nothing but a political theocracy, religious theocracy. It's nothing else, absolutely nothing else. Right. Faisal, do you have any question, Faisal?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much. And I have agreed with most of what you have said. And the question is, you have read up from your written book or one page, that Quran was never bestowed on Muhammad as a single book. It was collated into a book from collections of several manuscripts from various eras dating as far as back as the Hellenistic period to as late as the 7th century. So here my question is, do you have my particular evidence? Do you have any particular evidence according to your claims, what you have claimed?
As I just discussed with Irfan here, and if you really research into manuscripts and inscriptions, the hallmarks are very, very clear. For example, when it comes to emerald tablets, you will see emerald tablet, if you read the very first lines of the emerald tablet, you will see they have a staggering similarities with Surah Baqarah of Quran, the opening verses. Right? What are the opening verses? Yeah. Alif Lam Mim Zalikal Kitaba La Raiba Fi Hudal lil Muttaqin. You will see these verses have staggering similarities with emerald tablet, first verses. And they were allegedly translated by Zabir ibn Hunayn, who never existed. It is a fake name, or we don't know who. Somebody did the translation, interpolated it, and just vanished. He didn't want to take responsibility. So nowadays, Islamic scholars even questioning his existence. So, and also, for example, I just said that about the seven sleepers. The seven sleepers is story. It's a fable. It was a prevalent fable. And it was very much talked about a story during the later 5th, early 6th and 7th centuries. And handprints were found in a cave of several people, in the 7th century. So they were talked about. So it was so talked about in the Syrian region and Turkish region that it had somehow had to find its way into written form, and they were written down during that time. They were written down in poems. This story was very much described in fables.
Sir, in which poem you have found that?
I can't recall, but there are Christian monks who wrote poems about that during the 7th century and 8th centuries. Yeah. If you research into it, you'll see.
You have talked about Surah Yusuf and seven sleepers. But some say that Bible and Quran both from God.
Mm.
The same story mentioned in both book.
Right. What is the
So
reason of? I mean, Quran is attempting to. Quran is attempting to cleanse the Bible when it comes to uh, confusion about Trinity and others. Quran shouldn't be bothered about repeating chapters, right? Quran did not repeat chapters of the Genesis, really did it? Quran did not repeat Genesis chapter, but Quran did mention a few things from the Genesis chapter and said this is not right. For example, Genesis chapter of the Bible says that God created heaven and earth in 6 days and he rested on the seventh. But Quran says God doesn't need any rest. God doesn't need to rest, right? So some pivotal points Quran is attempting to clarify or refute, saying that God, clergies they intervened, so they changed God's words. But when we don't see any changes in the chapter of Quran and Bible, no change. Quran is not making almost any disagreement with the Bible when it comes to Joseph chapter. Then what's the point of repeating it? Why did Quran repeat the whole chapter? Word for word, almost. I mean, if it is not to, cleanse any particular point, what was the purpose of repeating the chapter? You have
So
an answer to
maybe
that?
it might be to clarify, because as we know, as the Muslim claims, Quran is brief. It is very short and brief. That might be the reason.
No, no, it can't be the reason. For example, the Adam and Eve story. Quran doesn't mention Eve by name, and Quran doesn't even mention Adam to be a human being. Quran mentions Adam as the father of all human race, but father means the very first being. But again, everything was created from, as Surah 4, verse 1 says, one nafsin or entity. So entity doesn't necessarily mean human being. Many of the liars in translations, they say that he was created from one human being. It doesn't mention human being in Surah 4, chapter verse 1. It means nafsin. Nafsin is this entity. It doesn't even say that one soul. It doesn't even mention that. It means nafsin. Nafsin means in Arabic entity in English. So I will say that when it comes to Adam and Eve story, Quran is pinpointing a certain issues. There are certain issues Quran is pinpointing. For example, Quran doesn't say that Eve was created from Adam's ribs. Bible does. Hadiths do. Abu Huraira does, if he ever existed, referencing to Abu Huraira. But he didn't describe the whole chapter. In the beginning, there was darkness, God found light to be good, and blah, blah, blah in Genesis. Quran doesn't go that way. So what was the purpose of Joseph chapter being copied entirety? It doesn't make sense at all. And again, there are staggering similarities of Solomon hiding in the cave. And allegedly, although there is no mention of name, allegedly, Muhammad was consoling Abu Bakr in the cave. In the Quran, as you can read, that there are 3, not 2, right? But this is shockingly copied from Bible story, where the spider was there, a spider web was there was pigeon, and Solomon was hiding. I mean, how do you justify that? God repeated a whole scenario, what Solomon had to go through in Bible, in the story of Muhammad and Abu Bakr? Nonsense. So I don't see, to deny. I can't be in denial of this. I can't be hypocrite. Right. Any other question from anyone? Any other question from anyone? If not, then we'll move on, uh, and we'll end the program, and we will come back tomorrow with other findings that have come across recently. And to conclude today's program, I must reiterate these things. Muhammad never existed. Omar never existed. Abu Huraira never existed. Ali never existed. Ali, even if he existed, he had nothing to do with Muhammad. And Muawiyah had no direct connections with Muhammad. Maybe someone he revered as prophet, but Muhammad. And then there's no proof of existence of Aisha, Fatima, Khadija, Abu Bakr. Can't prove. And there was no practice of Islam as we know of today during the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th centuries. You can't prove otherwise. You can't prove existence of any collection of hadiths, complete hadiths before the 10th, 11th centuries. You can't prove any Quranic full copy carbon dated before the 12th century. You don't know how Islam was really practiced during the early alleged Islamic history times. Rather, if you read the travelogue of Ibn Battuta, you will see there were like human depictions inside Kaaba even during his time. So these are all forcing me to believe that Islam, as we know today, shifted, changed its shape over the centuries. And today we have entered into a phase where Muslims of today, many of them, not all of them, many of them have started worshipping their clergy, their imams, their mullahs, unquestionably. And they don't believe it. They don't want to accept it, but it's true. They have started worshipping them. This is nothing but worship. In the name of following God, obeying God, they're obeying their representatives of God on this earth in the shapes of mullahs. And what Christianity has gone through in Europe, I fear that we might end up having to go through that in Muslim countries against the clergy. Thank you very much for being with me today. Take care.